there. I'm gonna do a little story time video, and I'm always really conscious because I've been making a lot of videos about like my journey and things, and I feel like I'm being really self-absorbed, but it's just because I don't have many other video ideas. I've covered a lot of topics, so for now I'm just like talking about my own experiences and hoping that will help some people and make people more aware. But I do hope to actually come up with some more ideas soon. Thankfully I did an Instagram thing a while back where people did suggest some things, so I'm doing research and hopefully I will be able to make videos on more topics soon. I just want to make sure that I have a great enough understanding of those topics to be able to talk about them. Anyway, yes, so today I was thinking that I could do a little story time about the time when I was 13 and I went on a week-long school trip away from home. And that was my first residential school trip, and it was really difficult because I experienced separation anxiety quite a bit. Like when I've spoken about this before, when I was younger I would not be able to sleep in a room my own until the age of 13, and I went to the school trip when I was 13. So I was someone who was like really afraid of being away from my parents, and I was away from my parents for a week. So I'm going to talk about how that went. So it started with a few students in my year group were invited to go on a school trip, and like they were inviting people in like slots because they couldn't let everyone go at once because there would have been too many people, so people got invited in slots. And I think I was one of the first people to be invited that year, so I was like really excited. I was like, I really want to go. So my parents let me go, but it was really funny because you have to fill out forms before you go on a school trip, and talk about your dietary requirements, any medications and things like that. And it was just quite funny because at that time I couldn't eat food dyes. I still can't, but my dietary restrictions are actually like a lot more now, but at the time it was just food dyes that I couldn't have. And my parents had to write a whole list of food dyes. Some have actually been banned in the UK now, but we didn't even know that, but some have been banned in the UK now, which is great. But we had to write a whole list of food dyes that I couldn't have because they trigger rage attacks and anxiety and things like that. And the teacher, like, who was running the school trip, just came up to me once in a corridor and asked, what happens if you have the food dyes? Because I imagine it can be quite confusing when you just get like a whole list of food dyes that a student can't have, and it sounds like really complex to find foods that they can eat. Unfortunately, it is quite complex sometimes, but thankfully I eat many natural foods like dried fruit and stuff. They don't have food dyes in. But at the time they seemed a little bit shocked by the long list of food dyes. I don't blame them. As well as that, you have to list your medications and stuff, and I was on 2 medications at the time, but I had to take them at different times of the day, so again that was even more instructions for them. And on the day when we were about to set off for the trip, most people like came in on their own and their parents were okay to leave them, but my dad had to come in with me and explain like how the medication works and like when I need to take it and things like that, just to make sure it was really clear. And yeah, so it did take a while to just ensure that the teacher in charge did have a thorough understanding of my medication and my dietary restrictions and things like that, but then we were set to go. So this was one of my first attempts at being independent. I'm not very independent. Even right now, I'm 18 years old. I have never been on a bus on my own, like I've been on a bus with a friend once, but on my own I haven't. So I was 13 and this was my first time attempting to be independent, and it was kind of scary. But like we had to stop once, we were on a coach, we had to stop once for like toilet breaks and things like that, and I had to find something that I could eat. But we stopped off at this little cafe bit, and the food there, I don't think it had ingredients on, so I had to kind of guess what had food dyes in and what didn't. But I feel like I got it wrong because I ate something with cheese in, and cheese can sometimes be dyed with food dyes like annatto, and that's one that affects me really badly. So I feel like I made a mistake then and ate something I couldn't have like straight away, so that wasn't great. And the coach journey was quite long. I think it might have been like a 6-hour drive up to the school trip. It was way up north, and I mean, I say it's way up north. I feel like to an American, 6 hours driving actually isn't that long, but when you're in the UK it's like a really long drive, okay? So it felt really long, and thankfully we kind of got through it because there were people in the coach singing Wonderwall and lots of classic songs and things, so that made it easier. So then we were eventually there, and oh great, yeah, you can see my shirt that I ripped, great. When we got there, I was exhausted from the coach journey, and I feel like most people were. But as soon as we got there, the teacher decided that it was time to go for a walk up a massive hill. It was almost the size of a mountain. It was a massive hill. So we trudged up that for a while. And unfortunately, as soon as I got back from after that walk, I was crying. I was so scared that I was suddenly away from home without my parents, and I sat on a rock and just cried. Thankfully, the teacher came and calmed me, and I phoned my dad, and like, they were really reassuring and stuff, but it was terrifying just at that point, realising that I'm going to be away from my parents for a week, and I usually can't even sleep in a room of my own. That was very scary. But yeah, unfortunately I did stop eating that much. There was an instant where the chicken, like, because they were trying to teach us life skills and independence, so they were getting these students to like cook food and stuff, but there was an instant where the chicken, I wasn't vegan at the time, I'm vegan now, but the chicken wasn't fully cooked, and then I became afraid to eat. So I didn't really eat much while I was there, which wasn't great. I resorted to drinking milk instead of eating. And that was actually really bad, because turns out I'm really sensitive to dairy, and dairy is the biggest trigger, the biggest dietary trigger for my tics, but I didn't know that at the time. I found that out 2 years after that. But because I couldn't eat, I was drinking milk in an attempt to get some nourishment, because you just can't not eat. I was just too scared to eat, and the anxiety was too much. I just couldn't eat. I only ate like little tiny bits, and I was really lucky that because of the separation anxiety, I was allowed to have my phone in like the dining room and stuff. Most people weren't, I don't think. I could, and I could also leave at pretty much any time and go outside and phone my parents or text them on something, because the teacher could see how terrified I was. Like, I never got a formal diagnosis of separation anxiety or anything, but it was just really obvious that I was really anxious a lot of the time about being away from my parents, and have been since a very young age. So it was very anxiety provoking while I was there, and I remember it was actually really sad. We were doing like team building activities, and again, they're supposed to help you develop like team building skills, obviously, but I was just crying, and thankfully my friends were understanding and they helped me and stuff, and it was really sweet. My friends are really sweet, I have to say. The people who I was sharing a room with, because we didn't have like rooms on our own in that school trip, we had rooms with like, was it like 6 other people maybe, or maybe I'm just not good at remembering, quite a few other people. And thankfully the people there were actually really understanding, and they looked after me well, which I'm very grateful for. They calmed me. And even, obviously this is a little bit off topic, but even when I wasn't in the school trip, my friends were really amazing. The friends who were with me in the school trip were also really lovely to me, just throughout school in general. They helped me walk and like held me up when my tics made it difficult for me to walk, and I could talk to them about almost anything, so that was really good. It's really good to have supportive people. Anyway, to the point, the trip, yeah, the trip. I got a sore throat there, which wasn't very good. I have no idea if that's actually what triggered the intense anxiety and various like issues with not eating that I was experiencing there. It may have been, or the sore throat may have been caused by anxiety in general, but I got a sore throat, and I was really worried about it, and my friend said that you should trust your body. If something doesn't feel right, then it's probably not, because I really felt that something wasn't right. My glands were up and stuff, but it might have been maybe either from anxiety, or maybe because I was sharing a room with people, and I'm not used to sharing a room with people. I may have like picked something up off of someone, but that wasn't great. But yeah, as I was saying, even though it was not a smooth journey, I still had fun, because I really liked the team building activities, even though some of them I cried in, and I did like the fact that we got to go out in nature and stuff. We got to look in caves and actually go inside huge caves, which was pretty awesome, and thankfully I'm not afraid of anything like that, so that was amazing. Either kayaking or canoeing, some sort of boat thing anyway, and the teacher was really lovely. They sort of went to show me the boat and explained everything to me before we set off, to like ensure that I wasn't anxious by any lack of predictability or anything. This is my cat's tail, by the way. Ta-da! She is beautiful. But yes, the teacher was really lovely and explained things really well, so that I didn't feel as anxious. But another thing that kind of went really weird when we were there was that it was that my tics came back. When I was 13, I didn't actually tic that much. I was going through a phase where I hardly ticked in that time because I was on medication, which thankfully helped me. But my tics just yelled fuck whilst I was with the teacher looking at something. Everyone laughed, and thankfully the teacher could see that I couldn't control it. But it was a bit of a surprise because at that time I didn't really have coprolalia. So that I don't know if it was my first, but it wasn't my first coprolalia tic, because when I was really young I would go F-U-K-E and spell it out, but that was just one of the first times I think I actually just randomly yelled the F word, or maybe it wasn't one of the first times. I think it was one of the first times. But yeah, that was also interesting in the trip. My anxiety made it difficult for me to participate in some of the activities. So we had the chance to do, I think it was abseiling. We would go down this sort of cliff thing while strapped into something. That's not a great explanation, but I really don't know how to explain what it was. I was too afraid to do it. Everyone else did it, but I was a bit of a chicken. I was like, I'm not doing this. And they said I could go down with the teacher and everything. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I just completely refused. So I just went back down, because to me that was just absolutely terrifying. I just could not do it, and I know my limits. I was too scared to do that. I've always been, well, actually not now, actually. I wouldn't say always, because now I'm not. But I used to be really anxious about lots of things. Like, there's another time where, off topic again, there was another time where I used to go to a kids club, which did summer holiday activities. At the summer holiday activity place, we did this thing where we could go on bits of wood that were in high up. That makes no sense. I don't know what it's called, like a sky trail thing. Anyway, it was very high up, okay, and I was crying. I was terrified. I was like, I have OCD. Why are you making me do this? I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. I didn't think it was fair, but maybe it's a good thing, because, I mean, facing your fears is actually a good thing. But I was honestly anxious a lot of time. Anyway, that wasn't the point, yeah. So I didn't do the abseiling at the trip. And overall, the trip was really difficult because of all the symptoms and stuff that came up and all the anxiety that I faced. But what helped was my peers and my teacher being really understanding and sort of supporting me, explaining things for me. Not babying me, but allowing me to do things differently from most people. So I was allowed to, like, leave the dining hall and use my phone and stuff, because it wouldn't have been fair to me to, like, be held to the same standards as everyone else, because I was just so much more anxious than everyone else. The trip was completely worthwhile. It was very hard, but it was worthwhile. So, I mean, I don't know if this is the best advice, but I'd say that if you're anxious about something, but you really want to do it, still try and do it, because it can be fun. I actually have loads of great memories from that trip, like from going in the caves and things, and from going out in nature. The times of anxiety and crying and not eating, obviously I remember those as well, but they weren't the most important bits of the trip. We had a good time. When we were on the boat thing, we sailed to a little island and just sat there and had a picnic. It was a good time. So even if you're really scared of something, try not to let that stop you. I feel like the trip did also act as a type of exposure therapy, because after that trip is the time when I started sleeping in a room on my own again, and I have been sleeping in a room on my own ever since. So yeah. I remember when I had developed the sore throat, the teacher was carrying Pirites, which is a type of antihistamine, and I was really worried that they would give it to me, thinking that my sore throat may have been caused by, like, hay fever or something, because I think on my medical forms it said that I did have hay fever in the past, or maybe it didn't say that. I think, well, it might have done, because I did have hay fever in the past. But they got Pirites, and I was so scared they were going to give it to me. Thankfully, they didn't. They must have been carrying it for someone else. But I remember I was so anxious about that. I was like, they better not try and give that to me, because Pirites is an antihistamine that makes my tics and Tourette OCD so much worse, and I was not going to deal with having even more issues to deal with in that trip. Thankfully, as soon as I got home after the trip, I started eating again, my anxiety went down, my tics reduced, I was fine again. It was just the stress of being away from home was too much for me, because, I mean, I kind of had been away from my parents before, but, for sleepovers with people I still knew, so I still wasn't completely separated from someone. However, the sleepovers, I was still really, really stressed in a lot of them. Like, I would go to sleepovers at family members' houses and just cry in the evenings and beg for them to, like, take me back home, because I just couldn't be away from my parents. So doing that week-long trip was very hard, but worthwhile.